Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's installment of Mish's Market Minute on StockCharts TV. I am your host, Mish Schneider. So for the last several weeks, we really took a deep dive into earnings reports, and there were some real great winners like Roblox, for example, and then there were some losers like Beyond. But this week, we're going to switch gears because the hottest topic of the week really is the climate accord, not only that Biden's been working on overseas, but that China has actually agreed to work with the United States, and I say agreed, allegedly, going forward in terms of trying to control the warming of the climate and going more to an alternative energy. Whether you believe in it or not politically, I always say keep those thoughts to the side because we are really interested in finding the emerging trends now for 2022 as we end 2021 and making money following price. So let's get started.
So there are many ways to look at the clean energy space, but I thought that I would actually focus today on one of the ETFs called PBW. And it's a global renewable energy ETF, and it's been popularly compared with ICLN, TAN, FAN, PBD, SMOG. And essentially what it does, the ETF holds a basket of wind, solar, biofuels, and geothermal companies. And these companies all are based on their perceived, I love that word, this comes right from the website, relevance to the renewable energy space. So what I did was I took a couple of screenshots from my favorite place to look at ETFs, and that's ETF.com after you put the symbol in. And you could see it's WilderHill Clean Energy ETF. And I wanted you to see basically exactly what this does so you understand. And it's looking at socially responsible sectors. So that's another big theme that started to emerge a few years ago that should continue as we get into 2022 and beyond. And you can see that besides the pure plays that I just mentioned to you, it really stays mainly in the United States. We'll look at that breakdown. And so essentially, it's not the most heavily traded ETF in terms of the clean energy space. Like, for example, it's not necessarily as heavy as TAN, but you do see the average daily money volume is $27.29 million. So that's pretty good for us. And if you take a look here, it's cut off, but US is the main bulk of it. It's like 93% companies in the United States. But what I thought was interesting is considering what we know about China now, China does make up 7.53% in the top country, and Canada then in third place with 5%. And then, of course, you can always look to see what the holdings are in any particular ETF on this. And so we're going to cover quite a few of these. And of course, what I like to do is give you the symbols that I'm going to use. So we're going to go through the comparables first, and then we're going to go through some of the ones that are in this particular ETF. So get your pens and paper ready because I always like to give very actionable information, and this space is hot right now. So let's start with the actual ETF itself, PBW. Of course, you can see here that we have our real motion in gear. We have our leadership triple play. We like to call it our leadership plugin. Both of these available on StockCharts, both extremely helpful as I've shown you week after week after week. And this is really against the benchmark. And here's the ETF itself. Now, what's interesting about this is that as I'm speaking to you on Thursday, this is the 200-day moving average, which still has a slight negative slope, and the upward rising 50-day moving average. And you know we like to look at these Bollinger Bands for any type of potential mean reversion trade. And of course, we like to look at the momentum indicators. So as this is clearing the 200-day moving average, which it did a few days ago, but then we tested it on the sell-off that we had on Wednesday this week. Now what we can see is that it is firming, but we still haven't quite gotten over that 200-day moving average in momentum. So as you're listening to this, it's certainly nowhere near too late to get into this particular ETF if this continues to hold up along with the overall market. And of course, that's key. Now, as far as the outperformance, you can see it's well outperforming the SPY, so that's a good thing. So what I would do at this point now is, considering we had these couple of highs here and actually a new 60+ day high with a reversal because it closed below the low that day, that means that we could have easily gotten a $10 correction down to 87. We went pretty darn close. The low yesterday was 88.57. So it was almost a full 10% correction. So there's two ways you can look at it. You could say, well, I want to be sure that it's going to take out this high and get in over 96.48. If that's the case, then you obviously probably need to risk to 90 because that's where your major moving average is in this particular instrument. And with that, considering that the average range is basically 350, then you would be really risking about 2 ATRs, which is certainly within reason for sure in terms of how we like to look at things. And I'm not going to show it to you, but I'm looking at the weekly chart on another screen, and I can tell you that it's just now clearing back over the 50-week moving average, which it has not been above since June. So it's certainly not too late to get into this particular ETF, and certainly points to the fact that as we get to the year end and into 2022, this could be a very exciting place to be. Now, I personally usually wait for a confirmation to see if it is actually indeed going to close over that 50-week moving average. And that means really I want to see it close over 93. And like I said, I'd probably risk to somewhere around 90. Now, if you don't like this one, let's look at some of the comparables. This one here is Global Clean Energy. And you could see that this is actually clearing the 200, but this cleared the 200 a while ago. And you can also see that we haven't gotten to the Bollinger Band here, but it's just now starting to outperform the SPY. And we do have the potential for the 50-day moving average to move up and clear the 200-day moving average, causing some kind of a golden cross. And if you don't like trading stocks that are trading $95 and you prefer to trade stocks that are $25, or in this case, ETFs, then you can see here that you still have plenty of opportunity with this one. And I would say probably I'd like to see this gap filled to this day, 25.65. If that happens, then I would say probably not a bad idea to go in and give it a little room. I would say risk to under 23.50. Now, the next one, of course, is the biggie, and that's TAN. And one of our models has been in TAN now for a while. So with TAN, again, you can see we're starting to head towards a golden cross here. The performance is starting to increase. We've taken out the 200-day moving average, and we have a lot of room on this one as well. So with this, we've just cleared all of this. So I would say that if it can hold up over, let's say, 97.50, that's a really good tighter risk if you don't want to risk that much. But I would also say at this point, I'd almost want to see this clear back over 100 before getting involved. And then you have a choice. You can risk to under 97.50, or you can go down to the low of yesterday when we saw the move lower at 92.34, and that'll give you a little bit more room. So far, I'm really interested in the PBW the best. FAN is another one. Now, FAN is really super thin, but look at this. This really focuses more on wind energy. And unlike what we're seeing with the other ones, this thing is really still in a bearish phase, which is fascinating to me. So what I would do with this is actually wait for this to be in some kind of a divergence where the momentum takes out the 50, and then we just wait for the price. So if you have the plugin, you can watch this, take a look at it from time to time to see if we've cleared the 50. And then if we've had, then you can wait to see if this happens where it gets over this 2130 level, and then you have a good risk down to about 2050. Okay, the next one is PBD. And this is yet another interesting looking instrument. They kind of all look the same. They're all cleared their 200. They're all in accumulation phases because the 50 is still below the 200. And none of them have actually taken out the high when they had the spike high and then sort of reversed. But again, if you don't like these big expensive stocks, this is not a bad one to look at. Clearly, you want to see this take out 33. But considering it needed about a $3 move lower to get a 10%, it didn't quite make there, about 8%. I would probably say at this point, for me, I would feel better if this thing actually takes out the high of 33. And then you can risk to, let's say, 31 or under 30.60 where the 200-day moving average is. And then finally, another small one is SMOG. Now, small in terms of it's not a heavily volume traded one, but you can see here that we've got a price at 170. And yesterday, this actually touched down on its Bollinger Band here. This had the golden cross already. So this one is actually in a bullish phase. And yet, if you take a look at the momentum, it declined even while the price was rising. And only now are we clearing back over the 200. So the momentum has a ways to go here. And in this case, I would either say you buy it against 170, and if it breaks 170, get out and see if it can go down another $10, or get in over 180 and risk to under 170 and see what happens there. Okay, so those are the other ETFs. Let's get into some of the stocks that are actually in PBW. And I like, by the way, playing these sort of ETFs because it gives you exposures to a lot of different stocks. Now, I haven't checked earnings on any of these things. So if you are interested in getting involved, I highly recommend that you look to see and make sure these companies have already reported, or if they're going to report, wait till when they report. So now, in this case, interesting, we had a big high here, and then it didn't have a reversal pattern because it never closed below the low of this day on this day. So that's a good thing. And you can see that in terms of the momentum, we're not going to see much because this is a relatively new instrument in Enovix, or I should say, a new instrument for a company that's been around. So what we do with this one now is, at this point, I would say I'd probably just be safe and wait till this take out 35. And then I would probably risk to the low under Wednesday's low of 28.30. But that certainly looks interesting. And then another one here is Bloom Energy. Now, Bloom Energy, also look at the momentum on this one is good. The leadership is good. We haven't had any kind of breakdown here. We're coming back. I would say you don't have to wait all the way for that high to be taken out, but based on the body of the candle here, I would probably want to get in somewhere over 35. Looks like 35.50. And then I would probably say just risk to whatever the low is this day, because it wasn't violated on Wednesday like the others, or under 32.37. And we don't know what the potential is in all of this, but it's always a good idea to look at some of the weekly charts on this to make sure where it's been historically. And you can see, like in this one, for example, it did trade up to about 44.50. So, when you're looking for maybe a $10 move, you don't want to risk more than half of that, or about $5. So just always make sure you look at your weekly charts. In fact, since we're here, let's take a look at PBW weekly chart. And you can see that at the end of the year last year, so seasonally, this might be a good time to play this too, it got up to 137.54. So we've got a lot of blue skies in this one potentially. All right, let me go back to the daily chart so I don't forget. Okay, next one we're going to be looking at is Wolf, which used to be called Cree, and I did not know the name changed on this one. I wish I had, because Cree has always been one of my favorite stocks to buy after it has a major dip. I kind of miss this, but nonetheless, it's kind of interesting here just to look at what this done. And it is a semiconductor, and they deal with long-lasting light bulbs. At least that's the very easy way to describe it. Great company. At this point, you see a lot of sideways consolidation. So this is a trade more for the momentum traders. But obviously, if we can get through all of this momentum, let's say close over 139.50, then you probably just need to pick a spot. And I would say look for all the consolidation here at 129. So risk about $10 to see if this thing has legs to get up much higher. And then the next one is FuelCell. So now we're getting more into the battery space. Now, FuelCell also, I think this one actually did report. And look, we are not quite there in momentum over the 200, even though we're clearing the 200 the day I'm talking to you for the second time, because it did it here. And then with yesterday's sell-off, Wednesday was a kind of a nasty sell-off. It hit this $10 move. But it's still a relatively cheap stock to look at. And if you're looking at this one, let's scrunch this up a little bit. Can we do that? Yeah, here we go. If you look in this one, you can see that, again, in June, it was trading higher. up at around 1262. So this is one that I would say if it holds 10, then you can actually get in. Today may have even been the day, but we also want to continue to see the momentum improve on that. The next one also had a big hot move, which was Plug. And Plug is getting some follow through here. So what do you do now? Look, you can see that these moving averages are starting to converge. Well, clearly, this was probably the day to get into it when it cleared that 200. And this is why I'm showing you these other stocks that are just clearing the 200 now, or in the case of PWW, just clearing the 200 now. You have a different type of trade. Obviously, this is the time to get into it. But if you miss that, then what you want to do is take 37 basically as your line in the sand support. And if it closes over this 43, then I think you're going to see this continue to move up. And if you look at just some of the historical area, we're probably looking at a move up to maybe about 60. So that's not a bad risk reward right there. Next one is AMRC. Now that's interesting that this says heavy construction. I am not really sure. Maybe I wrote this down. I didn't think so, though. Wrong. But nonetheless, in this particular case, it probably has something to do with clean energy, I'm guessing. So we have here also a huge parabolic move in this, probably anticipation of the infrastructure package would be my guess. So let's call 89 the support, and we're not too far from there. We did have a reversal pattern in this one. The high that day was 101. We did have a 10% move. That's beautiful when that happens, so we can get that out of the way. So now I would say as long as it holds 89, if I had to look for an entry point, I probably would say over this high right here, which looks like to me it's at about 98. So if it holds 89, you can get in over 98 and see where it goes. It looks like that would be new all-time highs for this. Now, Sunrun's been around for a while and it's been up and down. But this is another one. If you look at this huge base, this thing has been forming since really March of 2021. We're just now kind of getting out of that base, and I like that. So right here, we're not quite there yet. But if this can get through 60, then I'd say this clears the base, and you could either give it room for a swing position to under the 200-day moving average or under 51.86, or you can choose a tighter spot if you'd like. But to me, that would be the play, would be now to wait for this to actually show that all this work it's been doing over that 60 level, and I don't think you have to wait for 62, but from this peak high and now this peak high, if you get back over 60, even call it 61, this thing looks like it can continue to, well, run. Next one is ReneSola. Now, this is not even above the 200 yet. So those of you who want to buy some of the laggers, sometimes that's a good trade. Sometimes they're laggers for a good reason. And sometimes they're ripe for some kind of a merger or a takeover. But in this case, there's really nothing to do until we get through 10. But mark that down if you like to watch this stock and you happen to be somebody who's afraid of big numbers. It is showing some leadership here. And in the momentum, it isn't quite over that zero line yet, so you have some time. But you could keep an eye on this. I think $10 is the right place to look. Next one is BEEM. This is another thinly traded stock, but a good one. Also not above that 200-day moving average yet in momentum, even though it's just clearing it now. So you have a little bit that you could wait here. I would say once again, through 40, 41, that confirms that it's taking out all the resistance it saw in June before it started to sell off again. And if it can get through 40, 41, then of course you can use that 200-day moving average around 34.80 as your risk point. LICY is another one, Li-Cycle Holdings. This actually has broken out already. Here your golden cross is. Not much in the way of momentum because it's a new issue stock. You can see it's doing some good outperforming here. But this one looks like you have to understand the personality of some of these stocks. So it makes a big move up and then spikes down. Happened there a couple of days ago, but certainly not a reversal pattern anywhere. It did this day, but we already had that move done. So at this point now, I would say if it holds around today's low or maybe even lower, if you look at say 12, if we can close above this Bollinger Band, close above 1375, that could be another low risk opportunity, something you kind of put away in your portfolio and see what happens as we go into 2022. unless of course we get into a crash, which I don't see. Now this one cleared the 200. The momentum did not match the price movement here. This is actually lithium. And obviously you can't get any of this to run without lithium. Mountain Pass is another one I wasn't planning to show you today, but that is rare earth minerals. All these things are needed in order for us to really get to the clean energy space. And there's so many ways to look at playing this. I mean, you could look at some of the oil companies like British Petroleum, we've covered that before, that are also looking to convert into the clean energy space. So there's a million ways to make money in this space. I'm just showing you the ones in the PBW basket. And so this is pretty clear. It doesn't look like it's a heavily traded one, but you can see it's doing well. I would say at this point now, it should take out the high of, let's say, 97, and then you could probably risk to right under this low here of like 91.50. Tesla. I was really excited. Now, Tesla's in many, many different baskets, but it's part of the holding in this one as well. And you can see that once the news came out that Musk committed to sell some shares, this thing went down. These are called shooting star patterns, and usually you'll see a reversal, either a big gap to the upside or a big gap to the downside, and you can see what happened here. But now, after we've made this move and we kind of basically held 1,000, you can see that I don't love the fact that it's trading right now underneath the high of yesterday of 1,078, trading right now at 1,057. So what I would probably want to do is let's see what happens if it holds this 1,000. There are people who really think that this is just a temporary blip and this is going to go up to 3,000, and that's possible. But right now you could see it's leaning on the SPY in terms of its performance, and the momentum has come down a lot. In fact, it was kind of a great mean reversion trade because it broke through and then closed below. You had to wait a little bit for this to confirm. Look at that. You got to confirm on this day that it was probably going to go lower using just the real motion indicator. But for now, I would say I would wait a little bit longer. I'd like to see maybe another test of 1,000 before I'd get involved. SunPower is another one of my old favorites in the solar space. Looks like everything else. Again, you see how that 50 is accelerating towards the declining slope of the 200. But we are also, if we take a look just a little bit back, we're sitting here at good support at around 31. We haven't quite gotten there in momentum yet, and it is showing some leadership. I would say maybe a little bit patience here. I wouldn't even mind necessarily paying up on new highs over this level right here, or if I wanted to get involved, looking at it move closer to, let's say, 28. So even though I've shown you a few others, this would not be my favorite one right now. And then a few more left here. Here's Ballard. This is another power system. So look, this had this big reversal pattern. Now look at this, your 200 is here. So we are still basing in these. When I say that this is ripe for opportunity, I'm not kidding. This whole industry, which of course took a lot of negative hit with not only the media, but when we had some issues with power grids and energy storms and hurricanes, showed that, yes, we know alternative energy is not enough to fuel the entire world. We know that. But we also know that the commitment globally seems to be very, very strong. And if China is serious, then that could be another big factor going forward. But nonetheless, just looking at this is a battery. So we could see here we have pretty good resistance up to 1950. We're trading at 1819 as I'm talking to you. We're showing some leadership. And we did have a divergence in momentum here where it started to clear the 50, and then here it cleared the 50, and now we've had this repeat, or I should say this, oh goodness gracious, retest of the 50-day moving average or close on the sell-off on Wednesday, and now we're popped back up. So I would say, to me, if I really wanted to get in this one, I would probably wait for this at this point to clear that 200-day moving average like I showed you for PBW. Okay, two more left. One is Blink, another charging station. They again should get some kind of reprieve from the infrastructure package. Also not quite killing it in momentum, was above the 200, never confirmed it because we didn't get a 2-day close, still not there today. I would say at this point, gets through this 37.50, then I think this looks like a nice trade. And then you could probably risk to maybe either, if you wanted to take it far, down to around 33.50, that's $4. Or if you want to play it a bit tighter, then you can risk to, let's say, under 35. So I like this one a lot. In fact, this is one I'm going to actually write down in terms of a stock. So 37.50, risk 35. Okay, now last one is STEM. This too is not taken out the 200. And yet you can see the momentum here, and excuse me, the leadership is good. And again, we don't have much in the way of moving averages and momentum, but we do have a 50-day moving average that we can look at here. And it cleared the 50 and the momentum is actually cleared before it. So this one looks like it has a lot of promise. But again, at this point, when you're so close to a major moving average, just look for 2 closes above this 27.70. And then whatever the low is of the day that it first cleared, you can use that as a risk with a little bit of fudge and see where this one goes, because you can see that not too long ago, this was actually trading up in the mid to high 30s. All right, so I think that gives you a lot of ideas. Some of this is going to be written up in terms of a report that I do in terms of things to look at for 2022 that I'll do by the end of the year. And also I'll be on Real Vision on Friday as well, where I'll be talking a lot about this, and also next week on CNBC. So stay tuned.
Okay, so I hope that gives you a whole bunch of ideas of ways to play the clean energy space. And I hope that you all have a wonderful weekend. Thanks so much. Bye for now.
Hey guys, Dave Keller here with StockCharts.com. Thanks so much for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, and we hope you did, hit the like button right below. Also, we have so much new content every day. Consider subscribing to the channel. Just hit the subscribe button in the video or right below. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Have a fantastic day.